Disclaimer: this is a fictional dramatization created for artistic, emotional, and educational storytelling purposes. All characters and events are entirely fictional and created using AI tools. No impersonation, misrepresentation, or harm is intended. The content contains scenes of danger involving child characters. However, no real persons or minors were involved in its production. Grace's Love Stories produces scripted, AI-generated stories that promote, entertain, inspire kindness, and emotional connection. We respect our viewers and strictly adhere to YouTube's policies.
The judgment circle always drew a crowd, but today's gathering felt different. Darker, more vicious. Lyra pulled her cloak tighter as she navigated through the press of bodies, her daughter Wren's small hand clutched firmly in hers. The autumn wind carried the scent of rain and something else. Fear, anger, bloodlust all mixed together in a way that made Lyra's stomach turn. "Mama, I can't see," Wren whispered, rising on her toes. "That's probably for the best, little bird," Lyra murmured, though she herself couldn't look away from the stone platform at the square's center. Commander Draven stood beside it, his silver uniform gleaming in the gray afternoon light. The King's Justice, they called him. Lyra had other names for him, none of which she'd ever speak aloud. Not since her husband's death 3 years ago had left her vulnerable to men like Draven, who saw widows as problems to be solved or property to be claimed. "Citizens of Ashwood," Draven's voice cut through the murmurs like a blade. "Behold what becomes of those who defy the natural order." Lyra's breath caught as guards dragged a man onto the platform. He was massive, easily the largest person she'd ever seen, with broad shoulders and arms corded with muscle despite the obvious signs of starvation and abuse. Iron chains bound his wrists and ankles, the metal glowing with a strange blue light that made Lyra's healer instincts scream warnings. Silver-blessed iron, the chains that burned shifter kind. "This creature was found trespassing in King's Forest," Draven continued, circling the prisoner like a predator. "A rogue wolf with no pack, no territory, no right to breathe our air. The law is clear. Rogues are to be collared and sold, their service traded for the mercy of continued existence." The prisoner hadn't made a sound, but Lyra could see the tension in his frame, the way his jaw clenched against what must be excruciating pain. The enchanted chains weren't just restraints, they were torture devices, burning his skin wherever they touched. His eyes, when they lifted to scan the crowd, were the color of winter steel. Gray, with flecks of silver that seemed to flash with inner lightning. There was no submission in that gaze, no plea for mercy, only a cold assessment of every face, every potential threat, calculating odds that Lyra suspected weren't in his favor. "Starting bid, 20 silver marks for 5 years of service," Draven announced. The crowd jeered. Someone threw a stone that glanced off the prisoner's shoulder. He didn't even flinch. "Come now," Draven taunted when silence met his offer. "He's strong as an ox. Think of the labor you could extract from a beast like this." "He'll murder us the moment the chains come off," someone shouted. "Then keep the chains on," Draven replied with a cruel smile. "Magic-forged metal holds even the wildest wolf." Lyra's hands clenched into fists beneath her cloak. She'd seen Draven's justice before, the way he'd parade shifters through town, stripped of dignity and humanity, reduced to spectacles for the crowd's entertainment. The way he'd smile as he described their crimes, real or imagined. The prisoner's eyes found hers across the distance. For a heartbeat, Lyra forgot to breathe. There was something in his gaze. Not a plea, exactly, but a recognition. One person seeing another in a crowd of those who'd stopped being people and become a mob instead. 15 silver marks. Draven dropped the price. Surely someone has use for a beast of burden. Still no takers. The crowd was content to watch him suffer, but none wanted to actually purchase a creature they'd been taught to fear and hate. Lyra noticed movement at the edge of the platform, a flicker of color that didn't belong. Her heart stopped. Ren had slipped away from her side and was climbing the platform steps. "Ren!" Lyra lunged forward, but the crowd was too thick. She watched in horror as her nearly 8-year-old daughter crossed the platform to stand directly in front of the massive prisoner. The square went deathly silent. "Child, get away from that beast," Draven commanded, his hand moving to his sword. But Ren ignored him. She stared up at the prisoner with those impossibly large hazel eyes, so like her father's, and tilted her head as if listening to something only she could hear. The prisoner's expression had changed. The cold assessment was gone, replaced by something almost like wonder. He said something in a language Lyra didn't recognize, low and musical, with rolling consonants that seemed to echo off the stones. "I said move." Draven grabbed Ren's arm roughly, yanking her backward. What happened next occurred so fast that Lyra almost couldn't track it. The prisoner, despite the burning chains, lunged forward with a snarl that was more animal than human. The enchanted iron held him back, smoke rising from where it seared his flesh, but his intention was clear. He'd just tried to attack Commander Draven for touching a child. "There!" Draven released Ren to draw his sword. "You all saw it. This beast just attempted to strike an officer of the King's Law. The penalty for such aggression is immediate execution." "No!" Lyra heard herself scream. She shoved through the crowd, reaching the platform just as Draven raised his blade. "Wait," she gasped. "I'll take him. I'll pay whatever price you're asking." Draven's face went from battle-ready to predatory in an instant. "Well, well. The witch woman wants to purchase herself a pet." He practically purred the words. The bid was 15 silver marks. Lyra's heart sank. She had perhaps 8 silver marks to her name, her entire savings, carefully hoarded against emergencies. "I have 8 marks," she said, "and my skills as a healer for the remainder." "Your skills?" Draven laughed. "Your unnatural gifts, you mean? The ones that make crops grow out of season and wounds close overnight?" He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "I could have you investigated for witchcraft, Lyra. One word from me, and the Church Inquisitors would be very interested in your talents." Lyra's blood turned to ice, but she held her ground. 8 silver marks, she repeated. "Final offer." For a long moment, Draven studied her face. Then he smiled. The expression of a man who'd just realized he held all the cards. "I'll accept your offer on one condition. When this beast inevitably shows his true nature and attacks you, you'll remember that I offered you protection." His hand moved to her wrist, gripping it possessively. A widow and her child shouldn't live alone in these dangerous times. "We should discuss a more permanent arrangement for your household." Before Lyra could respond, a sound split the air, a growl so deep and primal that it seemed to vibrate through the stones beneath their feet. The prisoner strained against his chains with such force that the iron posts anchoring them groaned. His eyes had changed, the gray replaced by a burning gold that was definitely not human. But he wasn't looking at Lyra. His focus was entirely on Draven's hand wrapped around her wrist. "Fascinating," Draven murmured, though his grip on Lyra tightened rather than releasing. "It seems the beast has developed a fixation on you already. All the more reason we should—" "Please don't hurt my mama." Ren's small voice cut through the tension like a blade. She'd moved to stand between Draven and the prisoner, her hands outstretched, as if she could physically shield both of them. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "Please, he was just trying to protect me. That's what pacts do. Please don't hurt my mama." The prisoner went completely still, his golden eyes fixed on Ren with an intensity that should have been terrifying. Then, slowly, he lowered himself to his knees despite the agony the movement must have caused. The chains burned brighter, smoke rising from his skin, but he bowed his head to the child in a gesture that was unmistakably reverent. When he spoke this time, his voice was rough with pain and something that sounded suspiciously like tears. The words were still in that foreign tongue, but the tone was clear. A vow, a promise, an oath. The entire square had gone silent. Even Draven seemed momentarily stunned by the display. "That's impossible," someone whispered. "Rogues don't bow. They don't submit. They certainly don't show deference to human children." But Lyra knew what she was seeing. This man, this wolf, had just sworn himself to her daughter's protection. And the way his eyes lifted to find Lyra's face once more, the gold now mixed with that steel gray, told her that the oath extended to her as well. "What have I done?" she thought, even as she pulled the coin purse from her belt. "What am I inviting into our lives?" But watching Ren's small hand reach out to gently touch the prisoner's bowed head, seeing the way his entire body shuddered at that innocent gesture of kindness, Lyra knew she couldn't walk away. 8 silver marks, she said firmly, pouring the coins into Draven's palm. "I claim him according to the law." Draven's smile was sharp as a knife. "So be it. But remember this moment, Lyra, when you're screaming for help in the middle of the night. Remember that I offered you a better choice." He unlocked the chains himself, the silver blessed iron leaving angry red burns on the prisoner's wrists and ankles. The man swayed on his feet, his strength clearly at its limit. "Can you walk?" Lyra asked softly, offering her arm in support. Those strange dual-colored eyes studied her for a long moment. Then he spoke a single word that she somehow understood despite never having heard the language before. Thane. His name. He'd just told her his name. "Lyra," she replied, pressing her hand to her chest. Then she gestured to her daughter. "Ren." Something that might have been a smile flickered across Thane's battered face. He took Lyra's offered arm, his weight heavy against her side, and together they descended from the platform. The crowd parted before them like a sea, their faces showing everything from disgust to fear to morbid curiosity. Lyra held her head high and focused on putting one foot in front of the other. Behind them, she could feel Draven's gaze boring into her back. The commander wasn't done with her. She knew that with absolute certainty. This was only the beginning of whatever game he'd decided to play. But as Ren slipped her small hand into Thane's large, scarred one, and the massive prisoner looked down at her daughter with something approaching awe, Lyra couldn't bring herself to regret the choice she'd made, even if it cost her everything. The walk from Judgment Circle to Lyra's cottage should have taken 15 minutes. Instead, it stretched into nearly an hour of halting progress and growing dread. Thane's weight increased with each step, his breathing becoming increasingly labored. The burns from the enchanted chains weren't healing the way normal wounds should. If anything, they seemed to be spreading, silver-black veins creeping up his arms like poison through water. "It's not far now," Lyra murmured, though she wasn't certain he understood her words. "Just a bit further." Ren walked ahead of them, occasionally glancing back with worry creasing her small forehead. For a child who'd just witnessed a near execution and defied a commander of the king's law, she seemed remarkably composed. Too composed for her nearly 8 years, perhaps. But then, Ren had always been mature beyond her age. A necessity when your mother worked as the town's healer and your father had died when you were barely 5. "Mama," Ren said suddenly, stopping in the middle of the forest path. "He says thank you. For being kind." Lyra's steps faltered. "What?" "Thane. He says, thank you." Ren tilted her head in that listening way again. "He's speaking in wolf tongue. Can't you hear him?" Cold dread settled in Lyra's stomach. Ren, how do you— But before she could finish the question, Thane made a sound. Something between a groan and a warning growl. His body went rigid against her side, his head snapping up to scan the forest around them with sudden alertness. "What is it?" Lyra asked, following his gaze. The woods looked empty, afternoon shadows painting the undergrowth in shades of amber and gold. "What do you—" A branch snapped to their left, then another to their right. "Oh no," Lyra breathed. "Draven's men." But when figures emerged from the trees, they weren't wearing the king's silver. These were rougher men, dressed in hunter's leather with weapons that spoke of mercenary work rather than official business. "Well, well," the largest one said, his scarred face splitting into a grin that showed several missing teeth. "Looks like the commander's little bird has flown her cage. And with a beast in tow, no less." Lyra pushed Ren behind her. "We have business with no one. Let us pass." "See? That's where you're wrong." The mercenary leader circled them slowly. "Commander Draven paid us good coin to make sure you and your new pet make it home safe. Real concerned about your welfare, he is." "How generous," Lyra said flatly. "We're perfectly capable of reaching home on our own." "I'm sure you are." His eyes raked over Thane's swaying form. "But see, the commander also mentioned he'd pay extra if we could expedite matters. That beast looks about ready to drop. Would be a shame if he didn't make it through the night. Save everyone a lot of trouble." Understanding crashed over Lyra like cold water. Draven had sent these men to kill Thane, to eliminate the problem before it could become something more complicated. And if Lyra happened to be hurt in the process, well, that would only drive her further into the commander's protective arms. "You will not touch him," Lyra said, her voice low and dangerous. The mercenary laughed. "And what's a widow woman going to do about it? Heal us to death?" Thane moved before anyone else could react. Despite his injuries, despite the poison spreading through his veins, he shifted his weight and placed himself squarely between the mercenaries and Lyra and Ren. The growl that rumbled from his chest was pure predator, a sound that spoke of primal violence and absolute certainty. "Brave beast," the mercenary leader said, drawing a knife. "But stupid. You can barely stand." "Mama." Ren's voice was barely a whisper. "Mama. He's changing." Lyra felt it then, a ripple in the air around Thane, like heat waves rising from sun-baked stone. His body began to shimmer and shift, bones cracking and reforming beneath his skin. The transformation was trying to happen, his wolf rising to defend them. But it was wrong. All wrong. The silver poison fought against the shift, corrupting it, causing Thane to cry out in agony as his body tried to accomplish something the toxin wouldn't allow. "Fascinating," the mercenary breathed. "Never seen a shift fail before. The silver really does cripple them." Lyra made her decision in that moment. She'd kept her gift hidden for years, terrified of what exposure would mean for her and Ren. But watching Thane suffer, watching him try to transform through sheer force of will to protect them despite the agony it caused, she couldn't stand by and do nothing. "Ren," she said quietly, "cover your eyes and count to 10. But Mama—" "Now, little bird. Trust me." Ren obeyed immediately, her small hands pressing against her face. Lyra closed her eyes and reached deep within herself, to the place where her healing magic lived like a second heartbeat. She'd never used it this aggressively before, never projected it outward as a weapon. But desperation was a powerful teacher. The light that burst from her hands was blinding, pure golden radiance that slammed into the mercenaries like a physical force. They staggered backward with cries of shock and pain, their weapons clattering to the forest floor. "Witch!" one of them screamed. "She's a God's damned witch!" Lyra staggered, shocked by what she'd just done. She'd never projected her power outward like that before, didn't even know it was possible. The magic had responded to her desperation, to her need to protect, flowing out of her in ways she'd never imagined. "Run back to Draven," Lyra said, her voice resonating with power she'd never allowed herself to use. "Tell him that if he sends anyone else to threaten me or mine, I will not be so gentle next time." The mercenaries fled, crashing through the underbrush in their haste to escape. Lyra swayed on her feet, the magical expenditure leaving her dizzy and weak. Using her gift that way had cost her more than she'd anticipated. But before she could collapse, strong arms caught her. Thane had somehow remained standing through it all. Now he held her upright, his steel-gray eyes wide with something that looked like reverence and recognition combined. He spoke in that rolling language again, and this time Lyra caught one word clearly: mate. Then his eyes rolled back, and they both collapsed together onto the forest path. "Mama!" "Thane!" Wren's scream was the last thing Lyra heard before darkness claimed her. Consciousness returned slowly, bringing with it a symphony of aches and pains that made Lyra wish she could sink back into oblivion. "She's waking up." Wren's voice, pitched with relief and excitement, pulled her fully from the darkness. Lyra forced her eyes open to find herself in her own bed, afternoon sunlight streaming through the window. How had she gotten here? The last thing she remembered was collapsing on the forest path with Thane. Thane. She bolted upright, instantly regretting the sudden movement as her head spun. "Where is he? Is he—" "Right here, Mama." Wren pointed to the corner of the room where Thane sat slumped against the wall, his eyes closed but his chest rising and falling with steady breaths. Someone, Wren, presumably, had cleaned the worst of the dirt and blood from his face and wrapped his burned wrists with clean linen. "How did we get home?" Lyra asked, her voice hoarse. "He carried you." Wren said it matter-of-factly, as if a half-dead man carrying an unconscious woman through the forest was perfectly normal. "After you both fell down, he woke up first. I showed him the way home, and he carried you the whole time. Then he checked every room and every window to make sure it was safe before he let himself rest." Lyra stared at the massive form in the corner. Even unconscious and injured, Thane had prioritized her safety and her daughter's well-being over his own collapse. What kind of man, what kind of wolf, did that for strangers who'd known him for less than a day? "You called him Thane," Wren said quietly, settling on the edge of the bed. "Is that really his name?" "Yes. He told me at the judgment circle." Lyra swung her legs over the side of the bed, testing her stability. Her body felt wrung out like she'd run for miles, but nothing seemed seriously wrong. "Wren, we need to talk about what you said in the forest." "About hearing him speak in wolf tongue." Wren's expression became guarded. "You said we don't talk about the thing?" "That was before." Lyra cupped her daughter's face gently. "Before I used my gift in front of witnesses. Before we brought home a shifter. The rules have changed, little bird." "Are we in trouble?" Wren whispered. "I don't know," Lyra admitted. "Those mercenaries will tell Draven what they saw. And Draven will use that knowledge against us however he can." She pressed a kiss to her daughter's forehead. "But we'll face whatever comes together. Now tell me, how long have you been able to hear wolf speech?" "Always," Wren said simply. "Since I was little. I thought everyone could hear it. But when Papa was alive, he said I should keep it secret, that some gifts were dangerous to show." Lyra's heart clenched. Her husband had known? Had suspected what their daughter was? Before she could ask more, a sound from the corner drew her attention. Thane's eyes had opened, those strange gray and gold irises fixing on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. He spoke. A question, soft and concerned, still in that musical language. "He's asking if you're hurt," Wren translated. "He says he's sorry he couldn't protect you properly. That he failed his first duty to his—" She paused, frowning. to his soul companion. His what? Lyra's voice came out higher than intended. Ren tilted her head, listening more carefully. It's a wolf concept. The one your spirit recognizes. He says the moment you defended him at the judgment circle, his wolf knew you. And when you used your magic to protect us, it confirmed everything. She paused. He says he knows it's too fast, that humans don't understand the instant knowing that wolves feel. But his wolf has chosen, and wolves bond for life. Lyra struggled to find her voice. She stared at Thane, at the earnest intensity in his dual-colored eyes, and saw the truth of what Ren was translating. This man, this wolf, believed with absolute certainty that she was his destined mate. That's not possible, she finally managed. We just met. He doesn't even know me. Thane spoke again, longer this time, and Ren's eyes went wide. What? Lyra demanded. What did he say? He says his wolf knew you the moment you stepped onto the platform. That your scent called to him like coming home. That when you touched him, when you offered him kindness when everyone else offered cruelty, his soul recognized its other half. Ren's voice dropped to a whisper. He says you have magic in your blood. Old magic, the kind that flows through the ancient places, and that magic recognizes what you are. What I am? Lyra's hands were shaking. I'm a healer. Nothing more. Mama. Ren's hand found hers. You made light come from your hands. You knocked down 4 grown men without touching them. That's not normal healing. Thane pushed himself upright with visible effort, his burns still angry and red despite the wrappings. He crossed the room slowly, giving Lyra plenty of time to back away if she chose. When he reached the bed, he lowered himself carefully to his knees, placing himself at her eye level. He spoke directly to her this time, his hand moving to press against his chest, then reaching out, but stopping just short of touching her, a question in his eyes. He's asking permission, Ren whispered. Permission to show you something. Lyra's heart hammered against her ribs, but she found herself nodding. Thane's hand moved to rest gently against her chest, directly over her heart. The touch sent a jolt through her entire body, not painful, but powerful, like lightning and honey and home all mixed together. His eyes widened, gold overtaking the gray completely. He spoke a single word, and somehow, impossibly, Lyra understood it without translation. Yes. Then he leaned forward, his forehead pressing against hers, and Lyra's world exploded into sensation. She could feel his wolf, actually feel it, a presence both separate and intrinsic to the man. And more than that, she could feel the truth of what he'd claimed. A connection between them that shouldn't exist, that defied logic and reason, but that pulsed with undeniable reality. A soul bond, incomplete, raw, but unmistakably there. Oh gods, Lyra breathed. What's happening to me? Thane pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. When he spoke this time, the meaning came to her not through words, but through that impossible connection. Heart to heart, soul to soul. You were always meant to be mine, and I was always meant to be yours. Then his eyes rolled back, and he collapsed forward into Lyra's arms, unconscious once more. But this time, as Lyra held him, feeling the steady beat of his heart against hers, she couldn't deny the truth that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. Something had begun between them, something ancient and powerful and irreversible, and she had no idea how to stop it, or if she even wanted to. On that same third day, as twilight painted the cottage in shades of amber and shadow, Thane's condition worsened, despite everything Lyra tried. The silver poisoning had taken deep root, spreading those telltale black-silver veins across his chest and down his arms. His body burned with fever that should have killed a normal man, and in his delirium, he spoke in that rolling wolf tongue, sometimes urgent, sometimes pleading, always incomprehensible to Lyra's ears, but not to Ren. "He keeps asking for someone called Kale," her daughter reported, sitting cross-legged beside Thane's makeshift pallet by the hearth. "And he keeps saying the pack needs to know over and over." "Kale must be someone from his pack," Lyra murmured, wringing out another cool cloth to place on his burning forehead. "Though I don't understand why a rogue would have pack connections." "Mama," Ren's voice was very small. "What if he's not a rogue?" Lyra's hands stilled. "What do you mean?" "Commander Draven said he was a rogue. But Thane never said that. And the way he moves, the way he speaks, even I can tell he's used to being obeyed." Ren looked up with those two wise eyes. What if Commander Draven lied? The thought had occurred to Lyra more than once over the past days. Thane didn't behave like the rogues she'd heard about. Wild, unpredictable, dangerous. Even in his delirium, even with the fever consuming him, he was careful never to strike out blindly. When his thrashing came too close to Ren, he would somehow pull himself back, some deep instinct protecting the child even when consciousness had fled. That night, as Lyra sat vigil beside him, Thane's eyes suddenly snapped open, clear and lucid for the first time in days. "Lyra." Her name on his lips, spoken in heavily accented but understandable common tongue, made her gasp. "You speak? You can speak my language?" "Some," he rasped, his voice rough from fever and disuse. The words came slowly, carefully formed, as if he was pulling them from long dormant memory. "Learned. From traders. Border towns. Years ago." Each phrase seemed to cost him effort. The fever loosened my tongue, made the words come easier. "Don't talk," Lyra urged, reaching for more water. "Save your strength." His hand shot out, catching her wrist with surprising force. "Must tell you. Draven lied. I'm not rogue." Lyra's heart hammered. "Then what are you?" "Alpha King." The words fell between them like stones. "Iron Peak Mountains. Came here. Investigate attacks on my people. Draven's men. Ambushed me. Silver chains before I could shift. Before I could call my pack." The room seemed to tilt. "You're a king?" "Was tracking poison shipments. Draven's been selling silver-blessed weapons to human raiders. They attack my villages, kill my people. Women. Children." His grip on her wrist tightened, desperation bleeding through his weakening voice. "He couldn't let me expose him, so he made me disappear. Called me rogue, knew no one would question a rogue's execution." Lyra's mind raced, pieces falling into place with sickening clarity. Draven's eagerness to be rid of Thane, the mercenaries sent to expedite matters. The commander's insistence that Thane was dangerous, unpredictable, worthless. "Your pack," she whispered. "They must be looking for you." "Yes." Thane's eyes were already losing focus again. "But Draven's men patrol the roads. Any wolf trying to reach Ashwood will be captured or killed. My sister, Kale, she leads the search, but without knowing where I am." His hand moved from her wrist to her cheek, the touch achingly gentle. "I'm sorry, Lyra. Brought danger. To your door. Should have told you immediately. Should have." His eyes rolled back, and he was gone again, lost to fever dreams. Lyra sat in shocked silence, her mind reeling. She'd bound herself to an Alpha King. Ren had pledged protection from royalty, and Draven had committed an act of war by capturing and torturing a sovereign ruler of the wolf packs. "Mama?" Ren's voice came from the doorway, sleep-soft and worried. "Why are you crying?" Lyra touched her cheeks and found them wet. "Because I understand now, little bird. and understanding makes everything more complicated. The next morning brought visitors, though not the kind Lyra had hoped for. The pounding on her door was aggressive, official, unmistakably threatening. When she opened it, Commander Draven stood on her threshold with 6 armed guards behind him. Lyra. His smile was all teeth and no warmth. I've come to check on your acquisition. Reports suggest the beast survived the journey home. I find myself curious about how that's possible, given the amount of silver poisoning in his system. He's stable, Lyra said carefully, blocking the doorway with her body. Resting. I'd prefer not to disturb him. I'm sure you would. Draven pushed past her without invitation, his guards filing in behind him. But you see, there's been a complication. Some of my men reported seeing you perform unusual acts. Magic, they called it. The kind that makes local church authorities very interested. Lyra's blood turned to ice. I defended myself against attackers. Nothing more. Of course. Draven circled her small front room like a predator. And I'm sure the Inquisitors will see it that way too. Unless... He paused, his gaze landing on Thane's still form by the hearth. Unless we can come to an arrangement. What kind of arrangement? Marry me. The words were blunt, transactional. Become my wife, and I'll ensure the church looks elsewhere for witches. Your daughter will have a proper father. Your reputation will be protected by my position. His smile sharpened. And that beast in your hearth will be returned to the king's custody where he belongs. No. The word came out stronger than Lyra felt. No? Draven's expression darkened. You don't seem to understand your position, widow. I hold all the power here. Your freedom, your daughter's safety, that creature's life, all of it rests in my hands. Then you don't understand yours. Lyra met his gaze steadily. You kidnapped and tortured an Alpha King. When his pack discovers what you've done, there won't be enough silver in the kingdom to save you. The color drained from Draven's face. He told you. He told me everything. The poison shipments, the attacks on wolf villages, your little side business selling enchanted weapons to raiders. Lyra took a step forward and was gratified to see Draven take a step back. Did you really think you could start a war between humans and shifters and profit from both sides without consequences? You have no proof, Draven snarled, but his voice had lost its certainty. I have a dying Alpha King in my home. When his people come looking, and they will come, what do you think they'll do to the man responsible? For a long moment they stared at each other. Then Draven's expression shifted, becoming something far more dangerous. You're right, he said quietly. Which is why the beast needs to die. Today, before his pack can find him. He nodded to his guards. Seize him. No! Lyra threw herself between the guards and Thane. You can't. I can, and I will. Draven grabbed her arm, yanking her aside. And if you try to stop me, I'll have you arrested for harboring a fugitive and practicing witchcraft. Your daughter will be placed in church custody. You'll burn, and she'll forget you ever existed. Please, Lyra begged, hating the desperation in her voice. Please, he's already dying. The silver is killing him. Just leave him be, and nature will do your work for you. Not good enough. I need proof of death to send to the wolf packs, a warning of what happens when they trespass on human lands. Draven's smile was vicious. His head will do nicely. 2 guards hauled Thane's unconscious form upright, while a third drew a silver-blessed blade. Lyra screamed, magic crackling at her fingertips, ready to unleash everything she had. The door exploded inward in a shower of splinters and hinges. Wolves poured through the opening, massive creatures with fur in shades of gray and brown and black. They moved with military precision, surrounding Draven's guards in seconds. The largest wolf, its coat the color of polished steel, placed itself directly in front of Thane with teeth bared in silent warning. A woman followed the wolves inside, tall and regal, with silver-streaked dark hair and eyes that matched the steel-colored wolf's. She wore the leather and furs of the mountain clans, and when she spoke, her voice carried absolute authority. "Release my brother. Now." Draven's face had gone ashen. "Lady Kale, I can explain. You can be silent." Kale's gaze swept the room, taking in Thane's condition, the silver blessed blade, Lyra's protective stance. "You captured my brother, tortured him with enchanted chains, called him a rogue and tried to have him executed. These are acts of war, Commander." "He was trespassing on King's land," Draven blustered. "I was within my rights." "He was investigating murders of my people." "Murders you orchestrated." Kale moved to Thane's side, her hand gentle on his burning forehead. Her eyes found Lyra's. "You're the one who saved him. Who purchased him at the Judgment Circle." It wasn't a question, but Lyra nodded anyway. "Then you have my gratitude." Kale's expression softened slightly. "And my brother's eternal debt. I can smell his claim on you. He's marked you as his chosen mate, hasn't he?" Lyra's cheeks burned, but she didn't deny it. "We need to take him home," Kale continued. "Our healers might be able to counteract the silver poison. Here, with human medicine alone, he'll die within days." "Take him." The words tore from Lyra's throat. "Please, just save him." Kale studied her for a long moment. "You love him. After only 3 days, you love my foolish brother." "I don't know what I feel," Lyra admitted, "but I know I can't let him die." "Then come with us." Kale extended her hand. "Both of you. My brother's mate and her child belong with the pack. We protect our own." Behind them, Draven made a desperate lunge for the fallen silver blade. The steel-colored wolf moved like lightning, jaws closing around the commander's arm before he could reach the weapon. Draven screamed as fangs pierced flesh, and when the wolf released him, he collapsed, clutching his mangled arm. "You have one chance to avoid total war," Kale said coldly. "Confess your crimes to your king. Expose your conspiracy. Accept whatever justice your people demand. Do this, and perhaps my people will be satisfied without requiring your head on a spike." "And if I refuse?" Draven gasped through his pain. Kale's smile was all predator. "Then you'll discover what happens when humans declare war on wolves. Spoiler: humans lose." She turned back to Lyra. "We leave now. Bring only what you cannot replace. Your old life ends today." Lyra looked at her small cottage, the home she'd shared with her husband, the safe haven she'd built for Ren, the herb garden she'd tended for years, everything she'd leave behind. But then she looked at Thane's unconscious form, at the soul bond she could feel pulling at her heart like a compass pointing home. "Ren," she called, "pack your things. We're going on a journey." Her daughter appeared in seconds, a travel bag already in hand. "I know, Mama. I already packed for both of us, and I said goodbye to the garden." "How did you—" "I heard the wolves coming from miles away." Ren smiled, and I knew everything was about to change. As they followed Kale and her wolves out into the morning light, Lyra cast one last look at Ashwood, the town that had never truly accepted her, the people who'd feared her gifts, the life that had always felt like wearing clothes that didn't quite fit. She didn't look back again. Behind them, in the ruins of Lyra's cottage, Draven clutched his mangled arm and made a vow of his own. This wasn't over. He would find a way to destroy them all, not by a long shot. The journey to Iron Peak took 2 days of hard travel through terrain that would have been impossible for humans alone. The wolves carried Thane on a litter between them, moving with a grace that seemed to defy the rough mountain paths. Lyra and Ren rode on the backs of pack members who'd shifted to accommodate them. An honor Kale explained, rarely extended to humans. Your daughter has a gift, Kale observed on the second day, watching Wren communicate effortlessly with the wolves in their own tongue. She hears the old language. That's exceedingly rare, even among those with wolf heritage. I didn't know until recently, Lyra admitted. She kept it hidden, the way I kept my healing magic hidden. You won't need to hide anything here. Kale's voice was gentle. Iron Peak was founded as a sanctuary for those with gifts the human world fears. Healers, seers, those who speak with animals. All are welcome in the Mountain Kingdom. The words created an ache in Lyra's chest. A place where she didn't have to hide, where Wren could be herself without fear. It sounded too good to be true. Iron Peak itself stole Lyra's breath when they finally crested the last ridge. The settlement was carved into the mountainside, a combination of stone structures and natural caves, connected by bridges and pathways that seemed to grow organically from the rock itself. Waterfalls cascaded through the center of the city, their mist creating permanent rainbows in the afternoon light. Welcome to your new home, Kale said, genuine warmth in her voice. They were met at the gates by healers who immediately took charge of Thane, whisking him away to what Kale called the House of Healing. Lyra wanted to follow, but exhaustion and 2 days of constant travel finally caught up with her. Rest first, Kale insisted, her hand on Lyra's shoulder firm but kind. My brother is in the best possible hands. When you're recovered, you can see him. I promise. The chambers they were given were far grander than anything Lyra had known, a suite of rooms carved into the mountain itself, with windows that overlooked the valley below. Hot springs steamed in a private bathing chamber, and the beds were piled with furs soft as clouds. This is too much, Lyra protested. We're just— You're my brother's chosen mate, Kale interrupted firmly. That makes you royalty here, whether you feel ready for it or not. These chambers belong to our mother. They're yours now, along with everything that comes with that position. Royalty. The word still felt impossible, like a shoe that didn't fit right no matter how many times she tried it on. That night, after Wren had fallen asleep surrounded by furs, Lyra stood at the window watching moonlight paint the mountains silver. She could feel Thane through the bond, a constant presence at the edge of her awareness, like a candle flame visible in peripheral vision. He was still unconscious, still fighting the poison, but he was alive. That had to be enough. 3 soft knocks preceded Kale's entrance. I thought you might want company, she said, carrying a tray with wine and bread. The first night in a new place is always the hardest. They sat together in comfortable silence for a while before Kale spoke again. I should tell you about my brother. About what kind of man you've bound yourself to. I'd like that, Lyra said quietly. Thane became Alpha King 5 years ago, after our father was killed by human raiders, the same ones, we now know, that Draven was supplying with weapons. Kale's voice was carefully controlled, but Lyra could hear the old grief beneath it. He was young, barely 25, and thrust into leadership during one of the worst crises our people had faced in generations. Human expansion into our territories, attacks on our villages, stolen children sold into slavery. Lyra's hands clenched around her wine cup. I didn't know. Most humans don't. Your kings and commanders keep such things quiet. Kale poured them both more wine. Thane could have responded with war. Many in the pack wanted exactly that, to strike back with tooth and claw to show humans what happens when they attack wolves. But my brother chose a different path. What path? Diplomacy, investigation. He believed the attacks weren't sanctioned by your king, but rather the work of criminals and profiteers. So he went looking for proof, risking himself to prevent a war that would have killed thousands on both sides. Kale's smile was sad and proud at once. That's what led him to Ashwood. He'd traced shipments of silver-blessed weapons to Commander Draven. He was trying to gather evidence when Draven's men ambushed him in the forest. "And I bought him at a judgment circle like he was property?" Lyra whispered, shame burning through her. "He's a king, and I treated him like—" "You saved his life," Kale interrupted gently, "when you had no reason to risk yourself for a stranger. When you didn't know who or what he was, you saw a person suffering and chose compassion over fear. That's why his wolf recognized you as mate. Thane has spent 5 years putting duty before everything, before happiness, before love, before his own needs. His wolf was waiting for someone who would choose him. Not the Alpha King, not the political alliance, not the title, just him, the man. And you did exactly that." Tears blurred Lyra's vision. "I don't know how to be what he needs. I'm not royalty. I'm not even fully wolf. You're his mate. That's all you need to be." Kale squeezed her hand. "The rest, the politics, the protocols, the royal nonsense, we'll teach you. Together." Over the next 2 days, Lyra was introduced to the complex world of pack politics and wolf society. She met the Council of Elders who governed alongside Thane, wise wolves with silver in their fur and centuries of experience in their eyes. She learned the intricate hierarchy of the pack, the rituals and traditions that bound them together like threads in a tapestry. And she learned about the mate bond. "It's not complete yet," explained Mira, an elderly healer with kind eyes and hands gentle as snowfall. "He's marked you, claimed you with his bite, but you haven't claimed him in return. Until that happens, the bond will remain dangerously one-sided." "What does that mean?" Lyra asked, though part of her already suspected the answer. "It means you can feel him, his presence, his emotions when they're very strong. But he's drowning in feeling you. Every emotion, every sensation, every fear and hope and dream, it all flows through the incomplete bond straight into him with nothing to balance it." Mira's expression was grave. For a wolf in Thane's condition, already weakened by silver poison and fever, that kind of emotional onslaught is eating away at him from the inside. He's trying to shield you from his suffering, while simultaneously being flooded with yours. Guilt crashed over Lyra like a physical weight. "I'm hurting him just by existing near him?" "Not intentionally. But yes, your fear, your uncertainty, your grief over leaving your old life, your worry for him. He feels all of it and has no way to protect himself. It's like trying to hold back an ocean with your bare hands." Mira took Lyra's hands in her weathered ones. "There's only one way to balance the bond, to save him from this slow drowning. I have to claim him back." "Yes, you have to mark him as he marked you, completing the circle. But to do that safely, without harming either of you, you need to transform. A human cannot complete a soul bond with a wolf. The magic won't allow it. You must become what he is." Lyra's blood turned cold. "I don't know how to transform. I'm not even sure I can. I have wolf heritage, yes, but it's distant. Generations removed." "Your magic suggests otherwise," Mira said gently. "The healing gift you possess. It's not common human magic. It's wolf magic, passed down through bloodlines we thought had died out centuries ago. The old healers, we called them. Wolves who could mend with touch and light. You have their gift, Lyra, which means you have enough wolf blood to transform." "Then why haven't I ever shifted before?" "Because you never had reason to. Most partial bloods live their entire lives without shifting, their wolf sleeping quietly beneath their skin. Transformation requires a catalyst. Extreme emotion, life-threatening danger, or—" Mira smiled slightly. "A mate bond pulling at your soul, calling your wolf to rise and complete what's been started." That night, Lyra was finally allowed into the House of Healing to see Thane. The chamber was quiet, lit by softly glowing crystals that cast gentle light without harsh shadows. Thane lay in a bed carved from living stone, furs piled around him, his chest rising and falling with breaths that seemed too shallow, too labored. The silver-black veins had initially receded under the Iron Peak healer's care, responding to their powerful remedies. But in the past day, they'd stopped receding and begun to spread again. Slowly, inexorably, as if the poison had adapted to their treatments and found new strength. His face was gaunt, hollowed by days of fighting poison and fever and the weight of an unbalanced bond. Lyra sank into the chair beside his bed, taking his hand carefully. Through the connection between them, she could feel his presence. Faint, but still there. Still fighting with everything he had. "I'm sorry," she whispered, guilt thick in her throat. "I'm sorry I'm not strong enough to help you properly. I'm sorry I'm not what you need me to be. I'm sorry my fear is hurting you." His fingers twitched in hers, a tiny movement that sent hope flaring in her chest. Then, impossibly, his eyes opened, just a fraction. Just enough for her to see a sliver of steel gray. "You!" he rasped, his voice barely audible, each word clearly costing him, "are everything. Don't apologize for being perfect." Then his eyes closed again, consciousness fleeing like water through cupped hands. But his words echoed in Lyra's heart, settling there like seeds taking root in fertile soil. And in that moment, she made her decision. She would learn to transform. She would complete the soul bond. She would become what he needed her to be. Not because duty demanded it, but because her heart demanded it. Because somewhere in the past 6 days, despite the impossibility of it all, she'd fallen in love with an alpha king who'd knelt before her daughter and sworn protection. Who'd carried her home despite his own mortal injuries. Who'd chosen her as mate when he could have had anyone, who saw her as perfect when she'd never felt worthy of anything. "I love you," she whispered, pressing a kiss to his fevered forehead. "So you have to live. You have to fight. Because I'm not ready to lose you yet. I'm not ready to lose this chance at happiness." In the doorway, Kyle watched with tears streaming down her face. Her brother had finally found his mate. Someone worth living for, worth fighting for. Now they just had to keep him alive long enough to complete the bond. The blood moon would rise in 3 days. "It's our best chance," Mira explained to the gathered council of elders, her voice steady despite the gravity of what she was proposing. "The blood moon strengthens the wolf spirit in all of us, but especially in those whose wolves are dormant or weak. It makes transformation more survivable for someone with diluted bloodlines like Lyra's. Without it, her chances of surviving the shift are less than 1 in 10. "And with the blood moon's power?" Kale asked, though her expression suggested she already knew the answer wouldn't be comforting. "Perhaps 1 in 3. Maybe 1 in 2 if we're fortunate, and the ritual works as intended." Mira's expression was grave. "Still not odds I'd recommend under normal circumstances, but these aren't normal circumstances. If Lyra doesn't complete the bond soon, the imbalance will kill Thane. The silver poison is winning despite our best efforts, and the incomplete bond is draining what little strength he has left. We're running out of time." Lyra sat in the council chamber, listening to them discuss her potential death with clinical detachment, and found that she wasn't afraid. Or rather, she was afraid, but it didn't matter. Thane was dying because of her. Because of the bond he'd forged to save her life. Because his wolf had chosen her, and she couldn't complete what he'd started. She would not let him die for loving her. "I'll do it," she said firmly, her voice cutting through the murmured discussions. "Whatever ritual is required, however dangerous it might be, I'll do it." The preparations began immediately. Lyra was moved to a sacred chamber deep within the mountain, a place where the stone itself seemed to pulse with ancient power, where the walls were covered in symbols carved by hands long dead, speaking of transformations and rebirth, and the price of becoming more than human. The ritual is simple in theory, Mira explained as she walked Lyra through the chamber. We create a circle of pack magic, channeling the blood moon's power directly to you through our combined strength. Your wolf spirit, dormant and weak from generations of human blood, will be fed by that power until it's strong enough to emerge and take form. And if it doesn't emerge? Lyra asked, though she already knew. Mira's silence was answer enough. If the wolf didn't rise, the magical influx would tear Lyra apart from the inside. A quick death at least, though not a pleasant one. Kale will watch over Ren during the ritual, Mira added gently. Your daughter will be safe and cared for, I promise you, no matter what happens. Ren was allowed to visit each day, though Kale kept the full details of the ritual deliberately vague. Mama's going through a change, was all she'd say when Ren pressed for answers. A magical change to help Thane. It's dangerous, but your mother is very brave. On the second day of preparation, Ren climbed into Lyra's lap and wrapped her small arms around her mother's neck fiercely. You're scared, she whispered. I can feel it like thunder in the air before a storm. I am, Lyra admitted, holding her daughter close. There was no point lying to a child who could hear wolves speak and sense emotions on the wind like catching scents. But I'm brave too. You remember what your papa used to say? Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared, Ren recited, her voice thick with unshed tears. It means you do the thing anyway, even when your hands are shaking. Exactly. Lyra pressed a kiss to her daughter's hair. I'm doing this scary thing because I love Thane, and love makes us brave enough to do impossible things. Just like how Papa was brave when he was sick, remember? How he smiled even when it hurt. I don't want you to go away like Papa did. Ren's voice broke, and the tears finally came, hot and desperate against Lyra's neck. I'm not going anywhere, little bird. Lyra held her daughter tight, making a promise she desperately hoped she could keep. I'm just becoming something more. Something that can stand beside Thane as an equal. Something that can make him whole again. The night before the blood moon, Kale came to Lyra's chamber with unexpected news that made her heart leap. Thane is awake, lucid for the first time in 2 days. He's asking for you. Kale's expression was troubled. Lyra, he knows what you're planning to do tomorrow, and he's not pleased. That's putting it mildly. They found Thane propped up in his bed, looking furious despite his weakened state. The moment Lyra entered the room, his eyes, more gold than gray now, his wolf too close to the surface, fixed on her with burning intensity that made her breath catch. No. The word was a command, spoken in accented common tongue that had grown stronger with use. You will not risk yourself for me. I forbid it. That's not your decision to make, Lyra said quietly, moving to his bedside with more confidence than she felt. You could die. His hand shot out, gripping hers with surprising strength for someone so weakened. The transformation could kill you. 1 in 3, Mira said. Those are terrible odds. And the incomplete bond is killing you. Lyra squeezed back, channeling all her determination into that grip. Did you think I would just stand by and watch you die? Let you fade away because I was too frightened to take a risk? Better my death than yours. His voice cracked, raw emotion bleeding through. Lyra, I've been Alpha King for 5 years. I've sent wolves into battle knowing some wouldn't return. I've made choices that cost lives, sacrificed pieces on the board for the greater good. But I cannot. He broke off, struggling for words, his hand trembling in hers. I cannot bear the thought of your death. Not for me. Never for me. I'm not worth that price. Then don't die, Lyra said fiercely, her free hand cupping his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. Stay alive, and give me a reason to survive the transformation. Fight with me, Thane. Don't give up while I'm fighting for us both. They stared at each other, wills clashing like swords meeting, neither willing to back down. Then Thane pulled her forward with that surprising strength, his forehead pressing against hers in the wolf gesture of profound intimacy. If you die, he whispered, his breath warm against her skin, I follow. The mate bond won't let me survive your loss. Do you understand? If you die tomorrow, you're condemning us both to darkness. There will be no me without you. The words should have terrified her, but instead they settled something deep in Lyra's chest. They would live together, or die together. There was a strange comfort in that certainty. Then I won't die, Lyra said, putting every ounce of stubborn determination into the words. I'm not ready to leave Ren motherless. I'm not ready to leave this world. And I'm especially not ready to leave you. So I'll survive out of pure stubbornness if nothing else. Despite everything, despite the poison and the pain and the fear, Thane laughed. It was a broken, desperate sound, but it was real. Stubborn. Yes, that's exactly why my wolf chose you. It knew I needed someone too fierce to give up on me. His thumb traced her jaw with aching tenderness. Promise me something. Anything. If the transformation begins to go wrong, if you feel yourself slipping away into darkness, stop. Let the healers pull you back. Don't sacrifice yourself trying to save me. Promise me, Lyra. Lyra knew she was lying even as she said, I promise. Because they both knew she would do whatever it took, spend every last drop of herself if it meant completing the bond and saving him. That's what love meant. Holding nothing back. Risking everything for the one your soul recognized. They sat in silence, foreheads pressed together, hands intertwined, sharing breath and warmth and unspoken fears. Through the incomplete bond, Lyra could feel his terror, his love, his desperate hope, all tangled together like threads that couldn't be separated. I should have courted you properly, Thane said finally, a hint of his old humor creeping into his voice. Brought you flowers, learned your favorite foods, composed terrible poetry about your eyes, asked permission before I bit you like some fevered beast with no self-control. You were dying and delirious, Lyra said, fighting back tears and laughter in equal measure. I forgive you for skipping the flowers and the terrible poetry. When this is over? His voice grew fierce, determined, alive with plans for a future they might not have. When you've survived the transformation and I've recovered from this damned poison and we can both breathe without fearing it's our last breath, I'm going to court you the right way. Romance you until you're dizzy with it. Give you every reason to love me beyond the mate bond's pull. I'll be worthy of your choice. You already are, Lyra whispered, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. You protected my daughter when you could barely stand. You carried me home despite your wounds. You've been willing to die rather than see me risk myself. That's all the romance I need. That's all the proof I need that you're exactly who my soul was waiting for. Thane's response was to pull her into a kiss, gentle despite the desperation she could feel thrumming through the bond like a second heartbeat. It tasted of hope and fear and promises neither of them was certain they could keep, but that they'd die trying to fulfill. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kale stood in the doorway with tears streaming down her face and a soft smile on her lips. It's time, she said softly, though her voice was thick with emotion. The blood moon rises in an hour. The pack is gathering in the sacred chamber. Lyra stood, squeezing Thane's hand one final time, memorizing the feel of his fingers wrapped around hers. Stay alive, she commanded, channeling every bit of royal authority she didn't quite feel yet. That's an order from your mate. Stay alive yourself, he countered, his grip tightening for just a moment before releasing her. That's an order from your Alpha King. Come back to me, Lyra. Whatever it takes, however hard the fight, come back to me. As Lyra followed Kale from the room, she felt Thane's presence in her mind through the bond, a constant reminder of what she was fighting for, a light to follow if the darkness became too deep. The blood moon was rising, and with it, Lyra's chance at becoming something more than human, at becoming the mate Thane needed, the wolf the pack would accept, the woman she was always meant to be. Or her chance at losing everything in the trying. The sacred chamber thrummed with ancient power as Lyra entered, her bare feet cold against stone worn smooth by countless ceremonies. The blood moon hung in the sky beyond the chamber's open ceiling, massive and rust-red, casting everything in shades of crimson and shadow. The pack surrounded her in a perfect circle, 50 wolves, some in human form, others already shifted, their eyes glowing with reflected moonlight. Kyle stood at the northern point, Mira at the south, and between them, elders whose names Lyra had learned over the past days. The transformation cannot be undone, Mira said, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. Once begun, your human self will be forever changed. You will gain much: strength, longevity, heightened senses, a place in our pack. But you will also lose the simplicity of being purely human. Do you understand and accept this? I do, Lyra said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. The process will be painful, Mira continued. Your bones will break and reform. Your muscles will tear and rebuild. Every cell in your body will be remade. Some who attempt this transformation lose themselves in the agony and never return to consciousness. I understand. And if your wolf does not rise, if the dormant spirit within you refuses to wake even with the blood moon's power feeding it, the magic will consume you from within. Death would be swift but absolute. Lyra thought of Thane lying in his bed, dying slowly from poison and an unbalanced bond. Thought of Ren, who needed her mother but who also deserved to grow up in a world where love was worth fighting for. Thought of the impossible connection she felt to a man she'd known for less than a week, but who felt like coming home. I'm ready, she said. Kale stepped forward, pressing a kiss to Lyra's forehead. You're braver than anyone I've ever known, she whispered. My brother chose well. Welcome to the pack, sister. The wolves began to sing, a haunting harmony of howls and humming that seemed to resonate in Lyra's very bones. The sound built and built, pulling at something deep inside her, something that had slept her entire life, but now stirred at the call. Mira placed her hands on Lyra's shoulders. Look at the blood moon, let its light fill you, and when the pain comes, don't fight it. Let it wash through you. Your wolf knows the way, even if you don't. Lyra tilted her head back, staring up at that massive crimson disk. The moonlight seemed to thicken, becoming almost liquid as it poured down into the chamber. She could feel it on her skin, warm and electric, seeping into her pores like water into parched earth. The pack's song grew louder, more insistent. Lyra felt their magic joining with the moon's power, weaving together into something greater than the sum of its parts. The combined energy pressed against her, around her, through her, searching for that sleeping wolf spirit that Mira swore lived within her blood. Then the pain began. It started as a deep ache in her bones, similar to what she'd felt in those strange episodes back in Ashwood. But this time, instead of unconsciousness mercifully claiming her, she remained awake through every agonizing second. Her spine began to crack and reshape, vertebrae shifting and reforming. Lyra screamed, unable to contain the sound, but the pack's song didn't falter. If anything, it grew stronger, as if they were lending her their strength to endure. Her hands curled into claws, literally, as her fingernails elongated into sharp points. She felt her jaw elongating, her teeth sharpening. Every muscle in her body was being torn apart and rebuilt, every nerve ending set ablaze. "Don't fight it," Mira's voice cut through the agony. "Let your wolf rise. Call to her, Lyra. She's waiting for your permission." Through the pain, Lyra reached inward, searching for that presence she'd never known was there. At first, she felt nothing but her own terror and suffering. But then, there, a flicker of something other. Something wild and ancient and utterly inhuman. Her wolf, buried deep beneath layers of human consciousness and generations of dormant blood. "Wake up," Lyra thought desperately. "I need you. Thane needs you. Please, wake up." The wolf stirred, stretching like a cat waking from a long sleep. And suddenly Lyra wasn't alone in her own head anymore. The transformation accelerated. Lyra felt herself falling forward onto hands that were becoming paws, felt her human shape dissolving like mist in morning sun. The pain reached a crescendo that should have killed her, a moment of agony so complete that she lost all sense of self. And then, silence. Not an absence of sound, but a different quality of silence. Lyra blinked, and the world had changed. Colors were different. Less vibrant, but with more subtle shades of gray she'd never seen before. Scents exploded in her awareness, thousands of distinct smells she could identify and categorize instinctively. She could hear heartbeats, breathing, the whisper of wind through distant trees. She tried to stand and stumbled, her balance all wrong. She looked down and saw white paws instead of hands, felt a tail she'd never had before, registered the weight of a fur coat covering her entire body. "I did it," she thought in wonder. "I'm Wolf." The pack erupted in celebration, wolves howling their approval while those in human form cheered and laughed. Kale shifted into her steel-gray wolf form and approached Lyra, touching her nose to Lyra's in a gesture of welcome and recognition. Mira remained human, kneeling before Lyra with tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. "You beautiful, brave girl," she said. "You did it. Your wolf rose, and she's magnificent." Lyra tried to respond, and a sound came out. Not words, but a bark of surprise and joy. She was alive. She'd survived the transformation. And now, Thane. The thought cut through her euphoria like a blade. She could feel him through the bond, that ever-present connection, but it was still incomplete. Still one-sided and imbalanced. She'd transformed. Yes. But she hadn't yet completed the claiming. She needed to get to him. Now. Lyra lunged toward the chamber's exit, her new wolf body responding with speed and power that shocked her. But Kale blocked her path, shaking her head. "Not yet." The steel wolf's meaning came through somehow. Not words exactly, but intention and feeling that Lyra understood instinctively. "You need to learn control first. You're too unstable. You could hurt him or yourself." Lyra snarled in frustration, her new instincts warring with her human logic. Every fiber of her being was screaming to run to Thane, to complete what they'd started, to balance the bond before it killed him. But even as she struggled against Kale's restraining presence, she felt it. Thane's consciousness reaching out through the bond, weak but present. "You did it," his thoughts whispered into her mind, clear for the first time ever. "My brave, stubborn mate, you survived." "I'm coming," Lyra sent back, hoping he could feel her determination even if her thoughts weren't as clear as his. "Number. Rest first. Learn your new form. I can wait a few more hours. I've waited this long." But Lyra could feel his pain through the bond, the way the poison was advancing even as they spoke. A few more hours might be too long. She locked eyes with Kale, letting her desperation show. The steel wolf studied her for a long moment, then stepped aside. Then we go together, Kale's intention conveyed. To keep you steady. To make sure you don't lose control. Lyra nodded. A very human gesture in a wolf's body, and together they ran through the mountain passages toward the House of Healing. The House of Healing was quiet when they arrived, most of the pack still celebrating in the sacred chamber. Mira had followed them, breathing hard from the run but determined to oversee what came next. You must be careful, Mira warned as Lyra shifted back to human form. An instinctive process that was easier than she'd expected, as if her body now knew both shapes and could flow between them like water taking different vessels. The claiming bite must be precise. Too shallow and it won't complete the bond. Too deep and you could harm him in his weakened state. Lyra nodded, accepting the robe someone handed her. Her new wolf senses remained even in human form. She could smell the herbs used to treat Thane, could hear his labored breathing from rooms away, could feel the pull of the bond like a physical tether connecting her heart to his. When she entered his chamber, Thane's eyes opened immediately. The gold had almost completely overtaken the gray now, his wolf too close to the surface as it fought to keep him alive. Lyra, he breathed, and the wonder in his voice made her heart clench. You're glowing. She looked down at her hands and saw what he meant. A faint luminescence clung to her skin, residual magic from the transformation. The blood moon's gift, Mira explained from the doorway. It will fade in a day or two. But Thane wasn't looking at her hands. His gaze was fixed on her face, her eyes, drinking her in as if memorizing every detail. You're beautiful, he said. You were always beautiful, but now you're radiant. Like moonlight given form. Sweet talker, Lyra managed, though her voice shook. She moved to his bedside, taking his hand in hers. Through the bond, she could feel everything now, not just his emotions but his physical state. The silver poison had spread further, creeping toward his heart. The fever was burning him from the inside, and the incomplete bond was draining him with every beat of that struggling heart. We don't have much time, Mira said quietly. The poison has accelerated in the past hour. If you're going to complete the bond, it must be now. Lyra looked at Thane, at the man who'd become her entire world in the span of a week. Are you ready? I've been ready since the moment I saw you on that platform, he replied, his hand squeezing hers with what little strength he had. I'm yours, Lyra. I've always been yours. He tilted his head back, exposing his throat in the ultimate gesture of vulnerability and trust. The pulse point beat visibly beneath his skin, and Lyra felt her new wolf nature surge forward, recognizing what was being offered. This will hurt, she warned, her voice dropping to something more animal. I don't care, Thane said. Complete what we started. Make us whole. Lyra leaned forward, her human logic warring with wolf instinct. She'd never done this before, had no idea if she was doing it right. But her wolf knew. The ancient part of her that had slept for generations understood exactly what was needed. She pressed her lips to his throat first, a gentle kiss over his pulse point. Felt him shudder beneath her touch, his free hand coming up to tangle in her hair. I love you, she whispered against his skin. I should have said it before. I love you, Thane. And I love you, he replied, his voice breaking. My heart, my soul, my everything. Then Lyra's teeth found that perfect spot where neck met shoulder and she bit down. The world exploded. It wasn't like the claiming bite Thane had given her, fevered and desperate and driven by delirium. This was conscious, intentional, a choice made with full awareness of what it meant. And because of that, the bond snapped into place with devastating completeness. Lyra felt Thane's consciousness crash into hers, not as a foreign presence, but as the other half of something that should always have been whole. His pain became hers, his fear, his love, his desperate relief all flowing into her in a torrent that should have drowned them both. But at the same time, hers flowed into him. Her strength, her determination, her newly awakened wolf power, her absolute certainty that they would survive this together. All of it poured through the completed bond like water through a broken dam. And where the bond completed, magic ignited. Lyra felt it rising from deep within her core, the healing power she'd always possessed, amplified 1,000-fold by her transformation and directed by the mate bond straight into Thane's poisoned body. Golden light blazed from where her teeth met his flesh, spreading across his skin like sunrise breaking over mountains. The silver-black veins of poison recoiled from that light, writhing like living things as the wolf magic attacked them directly. Lyra poured everything she had into the healing, using the bond as a conduit, letting her power flood into Thane's body to burn away the toxin that had nearly killed him. She felt the moment the poison broke, a sudden release like a dam giving way. The silver-black veins dissolved, the fever shattered. The damage to his organs reversed itself in a cascade of rapid healing that should have been impossible. And through it all, the bond pulsed between them like a second heartbeat, perfectly balanced now, each of them feeding strength to the other in an endless cycle. When Lyra finally released him, pulling back with blood on her lips, Thane's eyes were clear for the first time in days, and they were his natural steel gray, with only flecks of gold remaining. It worked. Mira breathed from the doorway, her voice thick with wonder. The completed bond amplified her healing gift. The poison is gone. All of it. Thane stared up at Lyra with an expression of absolute awe. Then he laughed. A real, genuine, joyful sound that made her heart soar. "You're terrifying," he said, pulling her down into a fierce embrace. "Absolutely terrifying, and completely magnificent and mine. You're mine, and I'm yours, and we're never going to be apart again." "Never," Lyra agreed, burying her face in his neck and breathing in his scent, familiar and beloved, and now permanently etched into her wolf senses. "We're bonded for life. You're stuck with me." "Best fate I could imagine," Thane murmured into her hair. Through the completed bond, Lyra could feel his emotions as clearly as her own: relief, joy, love, and a bone-deep satisfaction that came from his wolf finally having its mate whole and safe and bound to him forever. They held each other as the golden light faded, as Thane's strength began to return with startling speed, as the bond between them settled into something permanent and unbreakable. In the doorway, Kale wiped tears from her eyes and smiled. Her brother had found his mate. The pack had gained a new member. And love. Impossible. Lightning strike. Soul-deep love had won against poison and politics, and every obstacle that had tried to keep them apart. The blood moon was setting beyond the windows, but its work was done. Two halves had become whole, and nothing would ever separate them again. 3 months later, Lyra stood on the high terrace of Iron Peak Castle, watching the sunrise paint the mountains in shades of gold and rose. Behind her, she could hear the sounds of the pack stirring, wolves greeting the morning with howls and laughter, the daily rhythms of a community she now belonged to completely. "Mama!" Wren's voice called from below. "Thane says come quick, the messengers from Ashwood are here." Lyra smiled, her new wolf hearing easily catching her daughter's excitement even from this distance. She made her way down the stone stairs, her movements now naturally graceful in a way they'd never been when she was purely human. The throne room, though Thane hated calling it that and preferred the gathering hall, was already filling with pack members. Thane sat in his chair at the head of the room, looking every inch the alpha king he was, though his face lit up the moment he saw Lyra enter. Even after 3 months, that look still made her heart race. "My queen," he said, extending his hand to her with a grin that was pure mischief. He loved calling her that, despite her protests that she didn't feel remotely royal. "Your mate," she corrected, as she always did, taking his hand and letting him pull her down to sit beside him. "There's a difference." "Not in my pack," he replied, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "My mate is my queen. The pack has spoken." It was true. In the months since the bonding, the pack had accepted Lyra with a wholeness she'd never experienced in Ashwood. They'd celebrated when she'd learned to shift at will, cheered when she'd healed a young wolf's injuries that should have been fatal, and welcomed Wren into their midst as if the girl had always been one of them. Wren, for her part, had flourished. She'd found friends her own age who didn't think her gift was strange, teachers who encouraged her ability to speak with wolves, and a sense of belonging that made Lyra's heart ache with gratitude. And Thane. He'd recovered completely from the silver poisoning, growing stronger each day as the completed bond fed power to both of them. He was everything Lyra hadn't known she needed. Patient with her, as she learned pack politics, fierce in protecting her from those who questioned a former human's place at the Alpha King's side, and tender in private moments that still made her blush. "Bring in the messengers," Kale commanded from her position beside the throne. She'd become Lyra's closest friend and staunchest defender, taking her role as sister to the Queen seriously, even when Lyra insisted it wasn't necessary. 3 men entered wearing the colors of the Human King's court. They bowed, not just to Thane, but to Lyra as well, a recognition of her position that would have been unthinkable 3 months ago. "Alpha King Thane," the lead messenger said, "Queen Lyra, we bring word from His Majesty King Roland. Commander Draven has been tried and executed for his crimes against the crown and against your people. The evidence you provided, the weapons shipments, the conspiracy to start a war, was more than sufficient." Lyra felt Thane's hand tighten on hers. They'd sent detailed proof of Draven's crimes through diplomatic channels, but part of her had worried the Human King wouldn't care about crimes against shifters. "His Majesty wishes to extend his formal apologies," the messenger continued, "and to propose a treaty between the human kingdoms and the wolf packs. He believes Commander Draven's actions were an aberration, not representative of his kingdom's true intentions toward your people." Thane was quiet for a long moment. Through the bond, Lyra could feel his conflicting emotions, the desire for peace, warring with the memory of his father's death, of the attacks on his villages, of the years of suffering his people had endured. She squeezed his hand gently, sending reassurance and support through their connection. "We will consider your king's proposal," Thane said finally, "but understand this. My people have been attacked, enslaved, and murdered by humans for generations. A treaty is meaningless without actions to back it up. If your king truly wants peace, he must prove it through deeds, not just words." "His Majesty understands," the messenger said. "He's prepared to offer reparations, establish protected territories, and punish any future crimes against shifters with the same severity as crimes against humans." "Then we will meet," Thane decided, "in neutral territory, with representatives from both sides. We'll negotiate terms that protect my people while allowing for peaceful coexistence." The messengers bowed again and withdrew. The moment they were gone, the throne room erupted in discussion, pack members debating the wisdom of trusting humans, the potential benefits of peace, the risks of lowering their guard. Lyra let the voices wash over her, her hand still clasped in Thane's. Through their bond, she felt his uncertainty, his hope, his determination to be the king his people needed. "You'll make the right choice," she sent to him silently, the bond allowing them to communicate without words now. "Whatever you decide, I'm with you. The pack is with you." "I know," he sent back, and the love flowing through the connection made her breath catch. "I have everything I need. My mate, my sister, my pack, and a chance at peace I never thought possible. Whatever happens next, we face it together." That evening, after the political discussions had ended and the pack had settled into their nightly routines, Lyra and Thane stood on their private balcony watching the stars emerge. "Do you ever regret it?" Thane asked quietly. "Leaving your old life? Becoming what you are now?" Lyra thought about Ashwood, about the small cottage and the carefully hidden gifts and the life she'd lived in fear of discovery. Then she looked at Thane, felt the bond humming between them like a song only they could hear, listened to Wren's laughter floating up from where she played with the pack's other children. "Not for a single moment," she said. "That wasn't living, it was just existing. This, here with you and the pack and Wren happy and safe, this is living." Thane pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. "I love you," he murmured. "I'll love you until the stars fall from the sky and beyond." "I love you too," Lyra replied, turning in his arms to kiss him properly. "My alpha king, my mate, my heart." Through the bond, she felt his joy, his contentment, his absolute certainty that they'd found exactly where they belonged. And she knew with the same certainty that whatever challenges lay ahead, political negotiations, pack responsibilities, the complicated task of building peace between humans and wolves, they would face them together. Because that's what mates did, what bonded souls did, what love did. And love, Lyra had learned, was the most powerful magic of all. Below them, the pack began their nightly song, a harmony of howls that spoke of home and family and belonging. Lyra tipped her head back and added her voice to theirs, her wolf spirit finally free and whole. And as Thane joined her, his howl twining with hers in perfect harmony, she knew that this was the happy ending she'd never dared to dream of. Not an ending at all, really, but a beginning. The beginning of everything that mattered. Thank you for listening to Little Pup Begged, Please Don't Hurt My Mama. The Alpha King's reaction stunned the pack. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the channel for more paranormal romance tales. Your support means the world. Until next time, may your own love stories be just as magical.